Minister, do you want, or someone else want to do it?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the consideration of the Senate the draft regulations entitled the Government Fees Amendment Number 2, Regulations 2023, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance under the provisions of Section 2 of the Government Fees Act 1965. And I give notice that at the next day of meeting, I will move that the said regulations be approved.
Thank you. Minister. Item number 2, all right, is in the name of, sorry, the second motion is in the name of Reverend Dr. Emily Dill, the Junior Minister for Legal Affairs and Constitutional Reform. Senator Dill, you have the floor.
I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the draft rules entitled The Rules of the Supreme Court Amendment Rules 2023. In exercise of the power conferred by Section 62 of the Supreme Court Act 1905. And I give notice that at the next day of meeting, I will move that the said draft rules be approved.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Item number 7, petitions, there are none. Item number 8, statements. We have at least 4 statements, and the first is in the name of the Honorable Owen Darrell, the Minister for Youth, Culture, and Sport, and Government Leader in the Senate. Minister Dill, you have the floor.
Madam President, thank you.
Minister.
Madam President, my statement this morning will be titled The 2023 Bermuda Day Parade, a Bermudian Renaissance. Madam President, anyone who knows me on a personal level would undoubtedly know that Bermuda Day is absolutely my favorite holiday of the year. For years, I've kept to the tradition of watching the runners in the half marathon speed past and enthusiastically enjoying the parade route and stopping along the way to catch up with friends as well as family, and enjoying the sights and sounds of the many dance groups, gombe troops, floats, majorettes, music trucks, walking groups that the Bermuda Day Parade has to offer. Madam President, I have joked with my team in the Department of Culture, and I told them that they cannot overload me with so many official duties that I miss out on my favorite part of the day, and that is celebrating being a Bermudian. They have promised, Madam President, to go easy on me. But in all seriousness, Madam President, this parade, this day is an experience not to be missed. And in my role as the minister responsible for culture, I have an even deeper appreciation for the hard work and planning that goes into organizing the parade, as well as participating in the parade. Madam President, this year's Bermuda Day and Heritage Month theme, as I've said before, is a Bermudian Renaissance. With this theme, we invited participants to think about an artistic rebirth and what that might look like and mean for our community. We captured some of this in our artwork and posters for this event, which featured singer Kanjale Taylor, visual artist Jabari Wilson, and Yassine Shantouf, and footballers Janai and Jade Simmons. How might we best celebrate and support the efforts of our creative community? How do we honor the innovators amongst us? Madam President, one of the ways that we offer this type of recognition is through honoring Grand Marshals. And I'd like to thank Mr. Milton Raposo, Ross McCall, Christy Hunter Oscott, Gavin Smith, Dr. Duranda Green, and posthumously Choi Ming Sr. for their many contributions, which I encourage you to read about in the Bermuda Day booklet, which is being published tomorrow. Madam President, we are also experiencing a bit of a renaissance in terms of participation, with approximately a 35% increase in participant numbers when compared to the 37 entries we had last year. This statistic is a powerful testament to our resilience, reflecting the value that we place on this specific tradition, which has experienced this rebound following the pandemic. I'm also pleased to note, Madam President, that this renaissance has also extended to some of the first-time participants in the parade, including the SMS Village Gombeys. We are also excited that the Bermuda Powerboat Association will be showcasing boats across multiple trucks. All of these different elements will ensure that this year's Bermuda Day Parade is bursting with lights, color, music, sound, dance, costumes, regalia, and extravagant displays of culture. Madam President, this parade is about all of us as Bermudians and is one of the best opportunities throughout the year to celebrate ourselves as people. Madam President, although the Department of Culture is assisted by several other stakeholders, including but not limited to the Bermuda Police Service, the Department of Communications, in creating an environment and overall structure for the parade to take place, the parade cannot and does not exist without participants. It was this expanded sense of gratitude toward the parade participants that caused me to want to find a way for the community to be able to better support them, since their involvement in this parade is their contribution to all of us. And I'll say that again, Madam President, please. Since the participants' involvement in this parade is their contribution to all of us. This, Madam President, is where the Bermuda Foundation was able to assist by creating the Bermuda Day Fund, launched last month for the purpose of charities and other community groups to benefit from having the cost offset for participation. This includes expenses associated with music equipment, the purchase of costumes, truck rental, as well as float construction. Madam President, although I will provide a fulsome details about this at a later time, for now, I'd like to say thank you to individual as well as corporate donors alike who have stepped up to the challenge and generously contributed so that every parade participant that has applied for funding will be assisted by the Bermuda Day Fund. This is a major accomplishment, Madam President, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that our community recognized the need to help and made it happen. I'd like to thank the Bermuda Foundation for all of their assistance in providing a vehicle for this. Madam President, I'd like to thank the hardworking staff at the Department of Culture, particularly Ms. Carlita Lodge, who is the lead organizer in the Bermuda Day Parade. I can tell you that Ms. Lodge, who you will recall was recently recognized as a rising star in last year's Public Service Excellence Awards program, puts countless hours going above and beyond the call of duty to ensure that the parade is safe, successful, inclusive, and enjoyable for an audience and participants alike. Madam President, it is my sincere wish that no matter how anyone chooses to enjoy the holiday on Friday, it must be done in a way that is safe. So please take care of yourself as well as others around you. Madam President, I believe in my heart that it's both an honor and a privilege to be a Bermudian. And so I celebrate all that we are and all that we have built together as a people. Madam President, I wish you and your loved ones a wonderful Bermuda Day filled with fun, fellowship, and community spirit. Madam President, I'd also like to end by wishing our colleagues in the Senate, as well as the whole of Bermuda, a very happy Bermuda Day on Friday. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. The second statement is in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister of Public Works. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Good morning and thank you, Madam President. Madam President, outlined in the government's platform of 2017 were a number of commitments made that were designed to enhance the lives of our citizens. Specific to the Ministry of Public Works, the government committed to reviewing the approaches to public water supply and wastewater disposal systems. To that end, I wish to provide an update on the status of one of the initiatives of the Water and Wastewater Master Plan implementation, and that is the establishment of regulatory oversight for the water utility sector. Madam President, a study was commissioned using the award-winning engineering consulting firm Associated Engineering International Limited to determine a long-term strategy for the parish of St. George's water and wastewater systems. The necessity of such a study was noted in the document Charting Our Course, Sustaining Bermuda, which was developed by the Sustainable Development Unit. One action point specifically states that a 20-year strategy was needed to ensure that the island's future water needs were adequately met. The study report, entitled Strategy for Sustainable Water and Wastewater Servicing St. George's Parish, was completed in February of 2018 and provided conclusions and recommendations on the governance, policy, and servicing strategies of the public water supply and wastewater disposal sectors. The report had two core governance recommendations, one of which was to establish a regulatory oversight body for the water utility sector. Why might there need to be a regulatory oversight for the water sector? Madam President, for those whom are not aware of the industry, I am just going to highlight some issues the sector is currently experiencing. Number one, Madam President, the wastewater treatment plants discharge into the ocean. Our local wastewater treatment plants are discharging minimally treated sewage through two outfalls operated by the two respective municipalities, while one is currently being decommissioned through the Bermuda Land Development Company, BLDC, Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Project. The larger second outfall, located off Hungry Bay and fed from the Front Street Wastewater Treatment Plant, remains in operation by the Corporation of Hamilton. This site discharges wastewater and occasionally grease into the Atlantic Ocean. When easterly winds blow, grease balls can form and wash up on South Shore beaches. In addition to impacting the aesthetic value of the beaches, grease balls are also a potential public health risk. While the Corporation of Hamilton has attempted to mitigate this issue by implementing a fats, oil, and grease policy in 2015, replaced its wastewater filtering screens, and hired a retired health inspector to work with restaurants to enforce the use and regular cleaning of grease traps, more investments are needed for equipment improvements. Number two, Madam President, Bermudians do not get as much water as they would like when rainfall is low. As we all are aware, Bermuda gets most of its water from rain harvesting, with piped and truck water supplementing demand. Though rainwater harvesting has functioned well for over 400 years, the current method has been and will continue to be impacted by climate change. Climate change is expected to lead to more severe storms and longer dry spells in Bermuda. Though total rainfall is likely to increase, it will be in the form of more severe storms and hurricanes, which can contaminate household tanks with salt water. During dry spells, household tanks are depleted and the demand for truck water spikes, which has led to rationing in some cases. Number three, Madam President, risk of consuming unsafe water by customers and tenants. The monitoring of piped and truck water quality is not consistent across all providers. Some are very conscientious and follow best practices, while others are not so reliable. The Department of Health does what it can with the resources available with regard to a drinking water quality monitoring program. However, currently, water testing is usually done on a voluntary basis or in response to specific complaints from customers. This creates a risk that customers could consume unsafe water as it is difficult for them to evaluate the quality of the drinking water by themselves. Additionally, if residents drink tank water that is unfiltered, it exposes the individual to potential health risks. Homeowners are ultimately responsible for the quality of the water in their tanks. To measure their drinking water quality, they can have their water tested by the Department of Health and private labs for bacterial and soil content, although no labs in Bermuda offer chemical testing. However, it is more difficult for tenants in rental housing to assess the safety of the water they drink. And number four, Madam President, possible price gouging and lack of incentives keep costs low. In any free market, competition between sellers helps keep costs low. When there is little or no competition, businesses are less likely to provide efficient services at the lowest cost possible, justifying the use of regulation to determine a price that is fair to both buyers and sellers. Unlike water utilities in other countries, large public and private service providers in Bermuda are not subject to economic regulation. Locally, private providers set their own prices. Since these companies are selling a basic daily need in a market without competitors, there is the risk that private service providers could charge prices far above the cost of service. Just to be clear, the government is not accusing any company in the current market of undertaking this. It is just a possibility that may occur in the future resulting from climate change and drought periods. In addition, without competition, service providers are less likely to provide high quality service and expand coverage to less profitable areas. For example, if public providers cannot charge what it costs to provide services, there is a risk that they may postpone maintenance or infrastructure investments, reducing the quality of service and limiting their ability to connect new customers. Madam President, these four, amongst other problems in Bermuda's water sector, as well as potential future risks, could lead to negative public health and environmental outcomes. These problems and risks may also contribute to higher costs for Bermudian households and businesses. In addition, they could jeopardize the country's reputation as a premier vacation destination and an attractive location for global business. Therefore, Madam President, in 2018, the Cabinet authorized the establishment of a working steering committee under the responsibility of the Ministry of Public Works with the objective of implementing the aforementioned recommendation to establish a regulatory oversight body for the water utility sector. Madam President, to assist in this initiative, in 2021, the Ministry of Public Works retained the international water consulting firm Castalia LLC to contribute in the development of a regulatory framework to address Bermuda's water needs for the foreseeable future. This exercise also included a review of similar countries and how their water sectors are organized and regulated. Madam President, in September and October of 2022, public consultation began for the possible establishment of regulatory oversight for the water sector to ensure sustainable water management for Bermuda's future. Through workshops with key stakeholders, online posts on the Bermuda Citizens Forum, social media live events, radio interviews, and other outreach channels to determine their view of the state of the industry to help guide regulation moving forward. Arising out of this, the government has identified certain current and future risks concerning the industry. Madam President and Senate colleagues, these risks were then analyzed by Castelia and technical officers, whom they then incorporated the results to form the basis for a second round of consultation, which commenced on January 23, 2023, and is ongoing. Currently, outreach for this second round of consultation includes, number one, in-depth one-on-one consultations with key stakeholders. Number two, an information booth that was located at the agricultural exhibition between the 27th and 29th of April 2023. Number three, another Facebook Live event scheduled for May 30th. And number four, a post on the Citizens Forum at forum.gov.bm, open until May 31, which includes the public consultation documents for feedback and comments by the public. This second round of consultation ends on 31st of May, and we welcome all feedback on this important initiative. The results from both consultation periods will be taken into consideration when designing the recommended regulatory framework for Bermuda. The recommendation will address each of the risks identified through the consultation process. Madam President, this government believes in protecting our residents and Bermuda's international reputation by reducing the health risks associated with a basic need. Without appropriate regulation, oversight, and anticipating future needs, we could not ensure a healthy population nor a healthy environment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. I believe you have a third statement. Sorry, you have a second statement. Please
Right.
proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam President. This statement is regarding Bermuda's fourth quarter economic performance. Madam President, I'm pleased to rise here in the Senate today to share with the members of the Senate the fourth quarter economic results. Madam President, the quarterly GDP and economic performance for Bermuda's economy continues to expand and show resilience. The Ministry of Finance estimated that the economy in 2022 would have grown by 3.4% to 3.9%. Quarterly GDP figures reflect a strong trend in that direction. The quarterly GDP estimates indicate that the economy has expanded by at least 5.9% in nominal terms in 2022. In real terms, the inflation-adjusted economy is estimated to have grown by at least 2.9% in 2022. Real GDP in the first quarter of 2022 has been revised upwards from a 5.2% increase to a 5.7% increase. Second quarter GDP has been revised upward from a reported 3.9% increase to a 6.8% increase. And the 5% contraction in third quarter has been revised to a 2.9% contraction in quarterly GDP. In the fourth quarter of 2022, the economy returned to positive quarterly growth after adjusting for inflation. The GDP in constant prices increased by 2.4% in the fourth quarter of 2022. The level of economic expansion was a direct result of increased household expenditure and growth in the export of goods and services. GDP in current prices increased by 5.6% during the fourth quarter. Madam President, consumer spending in the fourth quarter increased 4.5% year-on-year to 795.2 million. Consumption of services increased 6.1% year-on-year, reflected in higher expenditure for accommodation services, air transportation, and catering services. Spending on durable goods rose by 4.8%, due largely to increased expenditure on furniture and furnishings, information processing equipment, and motorcycles. Madam President, employment income in the fourth quarter was 7.3% above 2021 levels. Industries such as hotels, restaurants, international business, transport, and communication reported strong growth in employee remuneration. The results for government expenditure showed that consumption declined 2.6% during the fourth quarter, with low expenditure on equipment, rentals, and salaries. Madam President, with respect to business investment, we report that gross capital formation declined by 3.5% to 208.9 million. Investment related to construction fell 1.4%, while investment in machinery and equipment decreased by 5.5% due to lower imports of agricultural machinery, office furniture and equipment, and industrial machine parts. Madam President, the fourth quarter balance of payments indicates that Bermuda's trade with non-residents resulted in a 161 million surplus for the fourth quarter of 2022, down 64 million from a year ago. Services transactions realized a surplus of 45 million, narrowing 43 million year over year. The decrease in surplus balance reflected decreases in the business services account and transportation account balances. The surplus on Bermuda's primary income account rose by 12 million to 494 million, due mainly to an increase in net employee compensation. Further, Madam President, reports show that the fourth quarter international investment position, the IIP, for the stock of foreign assets held by Bermuda residents registered above its stock of foreign liabilities by an estimated 43.3 billion. The net IIP increased by 569 million from the third quarter of 2022. Total business registrations, Madam President, increased by 0.8% year on year, bringing the complete business register to 16,103. There were 132 new businesses registered in Bermuda during the fourth quarter of 2022. Madam President, in conclusion, the government continues to facilitate the expansion and sustainability of Bermuda's economy by creating a business environment which allows business to thrive. Within the coming weeks, the government will be releasing an economic development strategy for Bermuda. The economic development strategy will provide a strategic framework that will guide Bermuda to sustainable economic growth and development. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. I believe you have a final statement, a fourth statement.
Yes, I
You can
do.
proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Madam President, this one is in regards to the the Department of Workforce Development, expansion of the summer employment programs. Madam President, today I share the government's continued efforts to provide invaluable opportunities for the next generation of workers. I am pleased to inform members of the Senate that the Department of Workforce Development Summer Employment Program has increased the number of summer student placements from 130 to 180 spaces for the 2023 program. This increase is in direct alignment with goals 1 and 2 of the government's youth employment strategy, which speaks to increasing opportunities for local training and expanding career support for young people from high school through to early employment. Madam President, summer student placements provide an excellent opportunity for young Bermudians to gain practical experience in a range of fields, while also contributing to the work of our government and the community. These placements are an investment in our future workforce, and I'm thrilled that we will be able to offer these opportunities to even more young Bermudians. We recognize the importance of these placements, not only for the students who participate, but also for the departments and agencies who benefit from the fresh perspectives and innovation ideas these students bring to the workplace. By expanding the number of summer student placements, we are creating more opportunities for collaboration and growth. Madam President, the Department of Workforce Development offers 2 distinct programs designed for students at varying levels in their academic careers. The University and College Student Summer Employment Program, called SEP, provides college students with the 10 weeks of work experience with a weekly stipend of $600. The program's objectives are to provide meaningful work experience, offer exposure to careers and employment opportunities within the government, create opportunities to gain leadership and decision-making skills, and encourage citizenship and service. Additionally, the program aims to introduce participants to career and employment competency standards and to foster the development of career goals by connecting work experience to academic learning. In 2022, the program received a budget allocation of $450,000 and accommodated 80 students. This year, with the department reallocation of $154,000, this cost center, titled Contractors, number 70000.5270, the program will support an additional 20 placements, making it possible for up to 100 college and university students to participate. For the high school students summer internship program, the number of placements has increased by 60% from 50 to 80, increasing the budget from $80,000 to $116,000. This program provides young people aged 15 to 18 with practical and meaningful experiences in a safe, structured, and professional environment, mentored while being coached by proprietors and business managers in both the public and private sector. Students will be afforded a work shadow experience in their career interests for 4 weeks during the month of July and will be paid a stipend of $1,600 upon completion of the work experience. Madam President, the aims and objectives of the 2 programs vary. The distinction between the 2 programs is important as given the age demographic unique to the 2 groups. It is important to note that the Department of Workforce Development intends to reallocate $170,000 to accommodate the increase in student placements for the 2023 summer employment programs. Madam President, I'm grateful to the government departments, private sector partners, and personnel who have provided our young people with such rich and meaningful summer experiences. I would like to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to all of our industry partners who continue to work with us in support of our young people. Madam President, I would like to encourage the business community to consider extending summer employment internships to our young people this year. It is crucial to provide our young people with opportunities for meaningful work experience so that they in turn will become productive citizens within our community. In closing, Madam President, I look forward to seeing the positive impact these programs will have on the lives and careers of the young Bermudians who will participate. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Moving on with our agenda, item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, first reading of public bills. The following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are hereby read for the first time. Their titles are respectively the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 and the Insurance Amendment Act 2023. And Senators, these bills will be taken up in our orders of the day later in the a bit later. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question period. And before we proceed with that, Senators, I would just like to acknowledge in the chamber the presence of Stephen Simons, the policy analyst from the Ministry of Public Works. Welcome to you, sir. All right, then the first statement is the Bermuda Day Parade. Would any senator care to speak on the statement? Senator Robin Tucker, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning to my Senate colleagues, listening audience, and I just want to say thank you again to Minister Darrell for his statement this morning. I just have one question at this point, which is I'm interested to know, well, first, let me just say that Bermuda Day, I share the excitement with him. I mean, Bermuda Day is a fantastic day. And I also think it's just wonderful to see how people come together and support each other and everything that the holiday brings. So I share the excitement there. My question to the minister is I would like to know if there are efforts that are being made by the department to more robustly attract other Bermudian communities to participate in the Bermuda Day activities. I do recall a few years ago, the Portuguese community, for example, they participated in the parade, and it was wonderful to see additional Bermudian groups participate. So I'm just wondering if the minister can tell us if efforts are being made robustly to attract others. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on this statement? Ask any questions? Hearing none, then it's over to you, Minister Darrell.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the senator for her question. I will tell you this, that since I have been in this post, my first official engagement was in October. And at that engagement, it was a meeting for the national sports governing bodies. And you may say, well, what does that have to do with participation in the parade? I was tapped on the shoulder by a member of the staff, and they said, well, at this meeting, I'm actually going to give a presentation about participation in the Bermuda Day Parade. So I can tell you that efforts to attract more organizations in the parade go year round. Whether it is showing up to meetings, I know that the department has reached out to over 600 businesses, clubs, groups, and given presentations to try to attract individuals in the parade. One initiative that we did get started this year, and it's unfortunate that it didn't grow as much as we would have liked it to, but we reached out to every single primary school and with an initiative of creating a box cart so that all, it's 20 something primary schools could have a box cart in the parade. And what we did, we tried to link it with the agriculture exhibition. You do the box cart for that, and then a month later you wheel your box cart back out and you use it to parade. So there have been multiple efforts. I know one particular group that was pointed out just now was the Portuguese community. I'm happy to report that they are in the parade this year. They have been in the parade since its inception. There was to be an participation by another country that is celebrating a significant milestone, but I don't think that that is still happening. So we have sent the net, we have cast the net far and wide to try to get participation. And I'll repeat what I said in the statement. Unfortunately, gone are the days where communities go around and just say, "Hey, let's get together and bond around putting together a float." Many organizations just or some organizations reject the amount of time and effort that goes into creating this because it's on display and because Bermuda Day has become so popular. I mean, if you're not going to do it, to top-notch ability, some people shy away from doing that. But I'm happy with the level of participation that we have seen today. It is, I said, an increase, a significant increase, and it will be a joyous day on Friday. And soon as we finish, we'll do a post-mortem and we will double down on our efforts to go back to the same organizations that we reached out to, as well as others. So hopefully next year, when Cleveland County win the league and county and everything else this year, maybe Cleveland County will be in the parade to show off all of their trophies that they win this domestic cricket season. So hopefully that's one. If anybody from my club down in Devil's Hill is listening, we can put you on notice that they will be hopefully in the parade with the MP from the area as well as Senator Tucker and her blue and whites to march those trophies on the Bermuda Day Parade next year. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Before we move on to the second statement, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of the Minister, Colonel, the Honorable David Birch in the gallery. Welcome to you, sir, and other staff from the ministry. So the second statement that senators can ask questions on is the sustainable water management for Bermuda's future. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator DeCuto, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning to you.
As we look outside today, this phrase comes to my mind: water, water everywhere,
Mhm.
not a drop to drink. I was pleased to hear this statement. I know any resident in Bermuda has had their struggles with water, with the amount of water, with the safety and quality of water. And I also know that many renters struggle to get the attention to their water supply from the landlords that they would like. So I was pleased to see that. And I was also pleased to hear the acknowledgement of the role of climate change, which is real, it is happening. It's sometimes hard to figure out what it's going to do, but it's certainly going to create a lot of change in the patterns of how we live and how we access our natural resources. So I was glad to see that. I think I had two questions. And for context of the first question, we have a robust regulatory authority that I believe is supposed to regulate Belco. And we know that the people around the neighborhood of Belco, or in fact, many areas of the island, are struggling with the pollution from Belco that is affecting their lives. But somehow between the regulatory authority and the government, there doesn't seem to be any action over the many months of this that have been taken. And so, my question is, well, we could have a regulator, but will it have the right teeth? Will it have the right ability to act, to create the change required to protect the consumer? And how might that be different in this situation? My second question, there was mention of like the grease balls and how more investment was needed. I wonder if that comment takes into account, my understanding from a quick bit of research is that the city of Hamilton has in fact announced investment to install some very tiny, I guess they call them screens, they currently filter the waste on that pumping station at 3 millimeters, and they are well in their way into a project to reduce that down to 0.35 millimeters, which, you know, you can see how not much is going to get through that. And I understand that project is sitting in planning and has budget and this and that, and might even start this year. So that comment about more investments are needed in the statement, I wonder, is that reflective or taking into account that investment that the city is already making, or is there something else specifically that they were referring to? So those would be my questions. And just to reiterate, I'm glad to see the government's attention on this important topic for all of us here in Bermuda. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Kudu. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator White?
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the junior minister for bringing forward this paper. I just have one question really is what is the governance model that government is looking to establish in respect of this regulatory oversight? Is it likely to be a new authority, an independent authority? That's my one question. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. And I believe Senator Smith, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. Thank you to the junior minister for bringing this important information to the Senate chamber today. One of the things that is an issue is cost when it comes to people making sure that their water is safe. So yes, you can bring in a filtration system into your house, but it's costly not only to implement that first step, but then also to have it maintained on an ongoing basis to make sure the filters are changed and the like. But Madam President, there's another piece to this that, you know, used to be a point of pride for Bermuda, and that is to make sure that we had those pristine white roofs because you were maintaining them on an ongoing basis. And anybody that drives around Bermuda now will notice that in many cases that pristine white roof is no longer what you see. And I think a lot of it is just because people don't seem to have the money to be able to continue to maintain the roof at the level that it should be. The reason I bring that up is because my question is, as we're going forward with this, the idea that there are potentially residents that are ingesting water that is unsafe, have we done just a sample size of some of the houses in Bermuda to test the water just so that we can have an example of potentially the danger that is happening, because we would like to think that people would go through this process of getting tested, but the truth is many people are not even thinking about that. So is there a way for us to maybe just have a sample size of houses to see if there is an actual contamination problem in the houses in Bermuda when it comes to what's happening in their water, just as maybe a wake-up call to local residents that they potentially are ingesting something dangerous. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith. Would any other senator? Senator Tucker, you have questions too.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just have two basic questions, and I'm asking because I legitimately just do not know and would like to have an answer. So my first question is, why wasn't a local company, or maybe I should be asking, are there any local firms, engineering firms or what have you, that could not have provided the water and water system strategy for St. George's? I'm just curious because I just think that nobody knows Bermuda water and water catchments and all of that like Bermudians. So I'm just wondering, if there's a local company and why a local company was not used. And also, I just have a comment as it relates to the second round of consultations. The 4 points that were provided all seem to exclude people that, one, haven't attended the exhibition, or two, are not online. So I'm just wondering whether there are any sort of thoughts about expanding the opportunity for second round consultation to people who are not social media savvy or online. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak? Hearing none, then we will await a response from the Senator Roberts.
Hey, Thank you, Madam President. Thanks for the questions. Firstly, to the first question, um, as far as the actual regulatory body, will it have enough regulatory teeth, I guess, for lack of a better word, to be able to properly regulate this? Regardless of what form the regulatory body takes, it's important to exist in order to protect both consumers and users of our water resources. And a big part of the consultation is to determine its best form. Additionally, technical officers are reviewing all possible solutions, including legislative amendments, but they don't want to supersede the recommendations from the consultative process. And we will keep the Senate informed on the process. So I think the key right now is to get the feedback through the consultative process. Secondly, this was in, I think the second question was with respect to the investment that the corporation has already been making. The further investment for the Corporation of Hamilton plant is additional filtration systems to further remove remove grease and the potential for the grease balls. And yes, it is considering, so we are considering everything that the corporation's investments, corporation is already investing in. The third question will be an independent authority. There is much synergy in expanding the existing authority rule to incorporate water regulation. This would certainly reduce the cost of creating a new authority, but it will be independent authority. That's being considered. The fourth question, I think, was about just concerns about, I guess, danger to citizens ingesting the water. Water samples under the rule of the health department, and there are laws to ensure tank cleaning. The regulation will have a focus more on the water quality at the producers end rather than in the actual tanks. Just looking at, I think there was a question about any local firms. Still waiting for those answers. And also the consultation process for those who are not social media savvy. I know I can say, and I don't know if others have heard ads on the radio. And so those ads come on quite often, inviting persons to actually participate in the consultative process. And so, if there are persons that would want to, they can certainly listen to the radio and get the instructions from that as well, so as to be able to participate in that consultative process. Regarding firms, the study itself, and this goes back to, I think, the question on local firms, the study itself was quite specialized and required expertise from other jurisdictions who already have water regulation. However, much information had to be given to the consultants to encompass Bermuda specifics. So, yes, so that's the reason why we looked at a firm outside of Bermuda but we did give them much information on Bermuda itself. Yeah, and so I think I've answered just about all the questions. The console, oh, here we go for I think the last bit, and I mentioned about the radio. The consultation process is ongoing, and we will endeavor to gain as much input as possible from all sectors. The stall at the AG show was actually a great success, and we will seek to replicate this in the future at other public events. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. Don't have any.
Senator Ben Smith, Opposition Leader, you have a question or follow-up
Just a follow-up. Thank you, Madam President.
supplementary?
I believe that this was the answer for my question was that there's some regulation on the cleaning of tanks and that the focus is on the water from the source. So the issue is if you put clean water in a dirty tank, you've contaminated the water. If there's regulation on the cleaning of tanks, can we have some insight into the enforcement of that? Because specifically children are vulnerable, are drinking water from the tap, usually not going to be at a house that is going to have the filtration system, and bottled water in Bermuda is expensive. So I'm just asking if there's been any
Third
specific
question.
thought on this. Because if there is some kind of regulation on the tank cleaning, on what needs to happen, it would just be good for the public to know what that is. So thank you.
It's your third question. Thank you.
Thank you. Just waiting. See if we-
Oh, Senator Tucker, you have a supplemental?
Yes,
You
thank
can
you.
ask your supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to know if the junior minister could tell us, just give us some idea of what jurisdictions that our regulations may potentially be modeled after. She mentioned that other jurisdictions that already have water regulators and processes. I'd just be curious to know what some of those other jurisdictions might be.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, with respect to the first supplemental question, I guess, regulation on the cleaning of tanks, that is something that is being considered. However, currently enforcement is the responsibility of the Department of Health. And again, the cleaning of the tanks fall under the remit of the Department of Health. Generally, the water quality is good, but it's tank sediment, which is the issues, thus why all tanks are required to be cleaned every 5 years. The other question was regarding other jurisdictions, and those jurisdictions include the US, Canada, and the UK.
Senator Ben Smith, you have a supplementary.
Yes, supplementary. So considering that the remit of the tank cleaning regulation comes under health, will there be any synergy moving forward if we're moving towards a potential authority so that the cleaning and the regulation of that is lined up with having safe water?
Thank you. That's your second supplementary. Senator Tucker, you have a third question. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just curious to know, and again, I just want to thank the junior minister for responding to my questions. I'd just be curious to know the cost paid to the consultants to provide these studies. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Um, Senator Smith mentioned, I guess, about the synergy. This is being considered. Um, However, we're still in the consultation period, and we don't want to preempt any of that process. But this is being considered. As far as the course of the consultant, we will endeavor to get that information. At this time, we do not, it's unavailable, but we will get it.
Senator Tucker.
Um,
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm thankful to the Junior Minister for undertaking to provide the information. I just wanted to know if she can give us an idea of when we can expect to receive it. Should we expect the next meeting or a subsequent meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
We will endeavor to get it as soon as we can, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. That concludes the questions then on the second statement. We will then move on to the third statement. But before we do, I would just like to acknowledge in the chamber, I4Us, these are gentlemen from the Bermuda Monetary Authority. We have I4Us, we have Marcel Ramella, and we have Christos Aftonopoulos. Welcome to you, gentlemen. We're now moving on to our third statement then. And that is also in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor and Public Works. Would any senator care to ask questions? Senator DeCuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the Junior Minister for this important information. I was pleased to see some green shoots. However, I just needed to note that we have quite a lot of work to catch up, especially when we compare with other economies around the world. You know, while we have had some recent growth, which is great to see, I note that and I think the right way to look at this, Madam President, is to go back to before COVID, because that would be what I would call our steady state. The United States had plus 5% in GDP. The Euro area had plus 2.3%, and the OECD had plus 4%, whereas we're still at only 1% increase from prior to COVID. So glad to see the increases, but much more needs to be done. I sort of interpret some of those statistics as a decrease in business confidence when I see reduced capital formation, reduced investment. And so that's the context to get to my question, Madam President. You know, we currently have this economic recovery plan. And I think that as I've discussed often in the Senate, Madam President, that that plan has not worked, has not done the job for Bermuda, and that's reflected in those statistics I just saw, or I just noted for the Senate and those listening. And I was glad to see that the government is considering a new economic development strategy. So let me get to my question, which is, what have we learned from the prior economic recovery plan, and how are we going to do things differently to get the results that we need for this country? Madam President, thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. In reference to the fourth quarter balance of payments reduction of 45 million year on year, there's reference to the reasons being decreases in the business services account and the transportation account balances. I'm not sure I fully understand what's included in those two accounts. So if the junior minister could just provide some or elaborate a bit further on what is included in those accounts, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. Senator Tucker, I believe you indicated you would like to ask a question. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is in relation to the part of the statement on page 3, second paragraph, where it speaks about lower expenditure on equipment, rentals, and salaries. I'm just curious to know what accounts for the decrease in salaries and if that equates to a decrease in positions, or is that as a result of more contract workers? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Senator Ben Smith, you want to pose the questions?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just have my first question is, it's noted a couple of times on page 2 that there is an adjustment for inflation. I'm wondering if the junior minister can tell us what inflation rate was used. And also, if it would be possible for us to have a comparison with 2019, which was pre-COVID, so that we have a real indication of the health of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith, for your 2 questions. We will await a response.
Madam President, I'm just confirming with my technical persons.
Yes, Senator Robinson. When you're ready, you can respond.
May I just react? I just want to make sure I've got all the questions here. The first one was about what did we learn? And then we'll get answers.
Senator Decuto.
Senator Decuto, can you repeat your question, specific question again, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Junior Minister. Given that we have done the economic recovery plan and then now we're going to go into a new plan, what have we learned through carrying out the economic recovery plan, and what will we do differently in the new plan? Thank you.
I'll have to get an answer to you on that one so that we can be as comprehensive as possible. The next one was about why did the balance of payments? Madam President, I think I'm going to have to, because these questions, these are not surface questions and require more in-depth answers. I think I'm going to have to come back with the specific answers. The second one was about balance of payments and why this has gone down. And I think
Yeah, that was from Senator John White.
John Wang.
Yes, Junior Minister, it was just a question on if you could elaborate on what's included in the business services account and the transportation accounts, because that's the reference for the decrease in these
Yes.
from year to year of roughly 64 million.
Get back to you with that answer. And I think the other one was just to talk about the adjustments for inflation, I believe pre 2019. Yeah, Madam President, we'll have to come back with all the answers.
Senator Ben Smith, you
Ma-
have,
Madam President, I just have a question. Considering the statement was made this morning, we've asked the questions, the answers are not available. Will these answers be given in an oral way so that the public is made aware of the answers? I understand that it's going to take a little longer to get them, but the statement was brought today with the idea that if we ask the questions, they would be answered. So I just want to make sure that this process happens the way it's supposed to happen, Madam President.
thank you, Ben Smith.
Yes, it will. Yes.
Senator Robinson, are you anticipating that all the questions will be answered at a later time? You don't have any responses at the moment?
Correct. I don't have any responses at the moment, but we'll ensure that they get answered correctly and as in depth as possible at a later time.
With that said, then we will accept that as a response and anticipate that the response will be given probably at, if it's going to be done orally, would it be at our next meeting?
We will-
Since it is, since it has been requested that it be in this forum.
Yes, we will endeavor to get the answers for the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Senator Robinson, and thank you, Senators, for your question on that third statement. We will now move on to the fourth statement, which is also in the name of Senator Robinson, and that is the expansion of the summer employment program. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First, again, I'll start by saying thank you to the Junior Minister for bringing this statement. I just want to start by saying that I think that it's great that the government has the ability to be able to expand the summer employment programs. I think they're very beneficial. My question is very simple. I just wanted to know if when the students are placed, are there follow-ups with the employers and feedback sessions with the students following their placement? Reason being is because, obviously it's quite helpful to get the employer's perspective on how the student has performed, and as well as get an understanding from the student as to what they've learned and that they can perhaps take with them from the experience. So I'd just like to know if any type of assessment is done on either end following these students' placement. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this fourth statement? Senator Ben Smith, Opposition Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd like to also thank the Junior Minister for bringing this forward. Giving more opportunities for experience for our young people is a very important task to have happen. Knowing that in order for them to get full-time employment when they return from university, they will need to have some experience under their belt. I have a couple of questions. The first one, the Junior Minister spoke to in our statement that there is both government and private sector that would be involved in providing these job opportunities. From last year, there were 80 students in the college university program. Would the Junior Minister be able to give us the numbers that were employed under private and the numbers of the students that were employed under government? Following on from that, my second question is, can the Junior Minister give us some details around the kinds of jobs that were available, the kind of experience that they gave? Just because I think it would be important even for the public to hear what these experiences are. And my third point, there's a weekly stipend of $600 that the Junior Minister mentioned in the statement. could the junior minister please let us know what the weekly hours that are expected for the $600 stipend? I just think it would be good for us to also have that information. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ben Smith, for your 3 questions. Would any other senator care to speak on this statement or ask questions? Hearing none, then we'll await a response from Senator Robinson.
Regarding the first question about assessments, the students are actually assessed on a weekly basis. In order for them to actually receive their pay, they actually have a session with their line manager at the end of each week to go over certain skill sets, values, etc., just regarding how they are. So it could be things like, are you dependable, reliable, etc., and you're graded. And so the idea is that the student would have their grades from the beginning, and then each week they can see how well they are actually progressing. So there is constant assessment, and it goes on a weekly basis. I will have to defer and get back to the question regarding numbers of private versus numbers of government jobs. So I will have to get back to you with that information. Regarding the kinds of jobs students are placed in, when it comes to various governments, departments, they're placed and they will do administrative work and assist technical officers, etc., with administrative work. That could be anything from things like filing, things like inputting certain information into the computer system. It could be doing certain receptionist work. So it's a variety of administrative type jobs. With regards to the, even with some of the private sector, it's similar. So for example, there might be some that are at some of the mobile companies. So they may be the persons that meet and greet persons as they come in the door, and show customers to exactly where, where they have to go for their related question or need. So it does vary. Some are customer facing and some are administrative in nature. And as far as the number of hours, it's 6 hours plus their lunch hour, which is 1 hour. per day.
Senator Robin Tucker, you have a supplemental?
I do. I would just like to ask if the junior minister can also, I thank her for her responses. And she responded as it relates to assessments with the students. But I did also ask if there was feedback sessions from employers as well. So if she can answer that. And if I can just add my extra bits before I
It's a supplemental third question.
Third question,
Mhm.
please. I would like to know, because she did mention that the students are assessed on a weekly basis to receive their pay. So I'm just wondering what the success rate, I guess, would be just in terms of the students. What happens to the students that don't meet requirements? Is there sort of a rehabilitation? Is there a sort of exit strategy? How does that work? That would be helpful to know. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
With respect to the second question, I think students, there is, there's constant feedback I think the goal is to make sure that there is a win-win experience for both the student and the employer. And so the whole idea of I guess, the weekly sessions is to ensure that at the end of the day, there is, great outcomes for everyone involved, both sides. Um, with respect to, any issues, I think if there's a general feeling on both sides that things aren't worked out, I mean, the student can, can leave. I will say I don't know of any situations where a student has been asked to leave. But as I said, the whole idea is about um, a win-win situation. And I think really through the application process with the Department of Workforce Development, as they go through resumes, they look to try to place persons in the roles that they think, persons would be keen in doing based on their resume, based on their education qualifications, etc. at the time. And so the chances for things not to necessarily work out also become reduced as a result of the fact that there is a lot of upfront review before students are actually placed so that they can be placed most appropriately, as I said, so that there can be the win-win situation. There was a question, I can't, you mentioned about the feedback. Maybe Madam President, if Senator Tucker could just ask again, I guess just state again or restate that question. You're saying, just want to make sure I understand, feedback from employers to whom?
Senator Tucker,
Yes,
you want to
yes.
restate your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So to provide a little bit of clarity for the junior minister. So workforce development are reaching out to employers to see if they can have some arrangement to have a student come and work in their environments. So what I am wondering is whether the Department of Workforce Development actually does a debrief or a follow-up session with the employers to find out what their experience has been. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Yes, absolutely. Debriefs are done. And in particular, because the government is grateful to private sectors for being able to participate in the program. And so, of course, and as I said in the ending of my statement, we're encouraging more, particularly from the private sector, to be a part of. And so it's important that we do get that feedback. And so I can say that workforce development does have the debriefing sessions, is in contact throughout the year with employers, potential employers, etc. Because again, the more that we can have participate, that means that there is more available for students, and there are more students who can actually apply. So yes, those debriefing sessions are very important, and they do take place.
Senator Tucker, you have your second supplement.
Yes, thank you. I'd actually just like to know, and simply because the junior minister mentioned that the students have weekly feedback, I would just like to know how often the Department of Workforce Development is in contact with the employer when the student is engaged with them. Thank you, Madam President.
Workforce development is in constant contact with the employers, whether it's the time period of the students being there and or whether or not it's later on after the program has been completed for the summer. And additionally, it's, at the end of the day, it's government that pays the paycheck. And so the workforce development is going to be apprised of those weekly conversations with that the employer has with the student.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. I think that's all the questions that have been posed and responded to. And thank you, all senators. We will now move on to the orders of the day. And the first order of the day is the second reading of the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023, and that is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, I'd like to request that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that I can proceed with the second reading of the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023, and then followed by the Insurance Amendment Act 2023.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on, Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank
Carry
you,
on,
Madam
Senator
President.
Hudson.
I am pleased to present the bill entitled the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 to the Senate. The purpose of the bill is to amend the Digital Asset Business Act 2018 to provide for the following: to provide a framework for a consolidated exemptions regime, to provide that rules will be made in relation to cyber risk instead of cybersecurity, to include the new digital asset business activities of digital asset lending or digital asset repurchase transaction service providers as activities for which the Bermuda Monetary Authority may grant a license, and to clarify that the supervisory powers imposed by the authority include power to impose and vary conditions on the grant of a license. Madam President, additional amendments will also be made to other provisions of the Act to address reporting requirements, record keeping, and publication of information on the authority's website. Madam President, Bermuda's financial services sector is subject to the regulation and supervision of the authority. The authority was established in 1969 under the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969. The Act provides the authority with substantive licensing, supervision, and intervention powers to inter alia regulate the digital asset business sector in Bermuda. Madam President, the licensing and supervisory process is prescribed by law and supplemented by subsidiary legislation and guidance notes. These detail the classes of license based on the nature of the business and related risk, reporting requirements, statutory financial statement filings, and vetting of controller shareholders, amongst other aspects. Madam President, the authority is authorized to act as advisor to the Minister of Finance on policy matters related to any financial institution. Accordingly, the authority proposes laws where it can do so appropriately and consistently with its functions under the Bermuda Monetary Act 1969. It can also respond to an invitation to do so from international standard-setting bodies as well as other countries. Madam President, the Senate should be aware that the authority actively engages with its international regulatory peers, ensuring that it remains abreast of international developments and best practices. One such example of international engagement and collaboration is the authority joining the Global Financial Innovation Network in January of 2019. The Global Financial Innovation Network is a group of regulators committed to advancing financial integrity, consumer well-being and protection, financial inclusion, and financial stability through innovation in financial services. It is composed of 10 coordination group members, including the authority, 66 regular members, and 9 observers. Madam President, the Act sets down a supervisory framework for the oversight of digital asset business providers. Unless exempted under the Act, before engaging in digital asset business, a person must submit an application to the authority and obtain a full digital asset license, Class F, a modified license, Class M, or a test license, Class T. The Senate is advised that there are currently 10 Class F licensed undertakings, 6 Class M licensed undertakings, and 4 Class T licensed undertakings registered with the authority. Madam President, the digital assets ecosystem in Bermuda has significantly expanded since the enactment of the Act back in 2018. It should also be emphasized that Bermuda keeps attracting global players in the digital asset sector in the likes of Coinbase and Cash App. All these are testament to the robustness of the jurisdiction's digital asset framework. Madam President, digital asset lending and repurchase transactions has grown significantly over the last few years. This market, regulated in the appropriate manner, can provide increased market liquidity, flexibility in funding, as well as trading efficiencies. Madam President, digital asset lending is facilitated through intermediaries that connect borrowers and lenders of digital assets. They facilitate loans by matching borrowers' demands with lender supplies. Borrowers typically use these loans for making markets, margin trading, short selling, or other purposes, while lenders earn a yield or return on their digital assets. Madam President, the importance of regulation in maintaining stability for digital asset lending and repurchase transactions cannot be overstated, and as such, licensed persons will be required to adhere to the Act. It is noted that these activities already fall within the legislative and regulatory perimeter of the Act, as the digital asset services vendor activity captures any type of intermediation in relation to digital assets, thus including lending and repurchase transactions, and therefore entities conducting such activities already require a license. This notwithstanding, by incorporating a specific classification for these activities within the framework of the Act, the authority will be better equipped to establish bespoke guidelines. Furthermore, this approach ensures a clear regulatory environment for all stakeholders involved. Entities licensed to perform this activity will also be subject to frequent inspections by the authority and will have an array of prudential conduct and anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing obligations to fulfill. Madam President, the Senate will be aware that the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, sets down additional risk assessment and risk management requirements related to new technologies and other matters. Recommendation 15 of the FATF standards, which is also applicable to designated non-financial businesses and professions by virtue of Recommendation 22, requires countries and financial institutions to identify and assess the money laundering or terrorist risks that may arise in relation to the following: the development of new products and new business practices, including new delivery mechanisms, and the use of new or developing technologies for both new and pre-existing products. Madam President, in the case of financial institutions, FATF requires that such a risk assessment should take place prior to launch of the new products, business practices, or the use of new or developing technologies. They are also required to take appropriate measures to manage or mitigate the risks. Madam President, in furtherance of the above, the Senate is advised that a copy of the authority's anti-money laundering risk assessment has been provided to the Ministry of Finance in accordance with the ministry's policy development process. Given the fact that the proposal modifies an existing framework which has been previously subject to a comprehensive risk assessment, the Ministry of Finance is satisfied with the authority's assessment that no additional risk arises in connection with this proposal. Madam President, the digital asset sector, including cryptocurrencies and other blockchain-based assets, has grown significantly in recent years, fueled by increasing adoption and interest from both retail and institutional investors. While this growth has not been without its challenges, such as regulatory uncertainties and market volatility, Bermuda has been able to establish itself as a credible hub for digital asset businesses. Madam President, by way of background, it was determined from the outset that Bermuda would develop and implement a regulatory framework for the digital asset sector, even before the Financial Action Task Force or other standard-setting bodies had established any requirements in that regard. Over time, Bermuda has taken active steps to review and update the regulatory requirements as part of its work to ensure that its supervision is robust and appropriately addresses identified risks. Through this process, Bermuda is now favorably regarded as a jurisdiction with a demonstrated commitment to developing the sector in a prudent and considered manner. Madam President, it is crucial to acknowledge the significance of appropriate regulation in the digital asset industry, especially given recent events such as FTX's collapse. These events emphasize the need for stability, which is increasingly sought after by consumers, investors, and businesses. Madam President, it should be stressed once again that the incorporation of a specific classification within the framework of the Act for persons engaging in digital asset lending and repurchase transactions will both provide greater legal and regulatory certainty for all stakeholders involved and better equip the authority to establish bespoke guidelines for these types of activities. This will allow Bermuda to embrace opportunities balanced by robust regulation. Madam President, a consultation paper together with the draft bill was published on the authority's website, www.bma.bm, from November 2021 through January 2022. Madam President, we welcome the finalization of the bill. In all this process, the authority, together with the ministry, has displayed a strong commitment to transparency as to the standards that are expected and the requirements that are imposed on the financial services sector. Madam President, as per the authority's normal custom and practice, the Senate is advised that these amendments appropriately take into account the feedback provided by the various industry stakeholders. I would like to thank all of those persons within the authority, the Attorney General's chambers, the Ministry of Finance, and the private sector who have all assisted with the development of this bill, which once again reflects our commitment to strong and robust regulation of this sector. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister for Finance. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Hodgson. We're pleased to see this bill. Regarding the digital asset business in general, we are broadly but cautiously supportive. We are very keen to see legislation that brings additional powers and tools to the BMA. Some of the things that were mentioned in this bill that I was pleased to see about the ability to create conditions on the licenses, some reporting requirements, talking about cyber risk instead of cybersecurity. I mean, that's a little bit technical, but it means that they will be more focused on the outcomes that happen to these companies and their clients or customers as opposed to what they do. So definitely pleased to see that, because with these crypto assets, things like hacking or loss of the data are incredibly impactful. So those need to be protected against. I'm still worried, Madam President. I'm still worried. We've heard from the junior minister, Bermuda keeps attracting global players, and Bermuda is a credible hub for digital business. And I'm struggling in my mind to separate the broader concept of fintech, which I think could be a good match from Bermuda, and what I consider to be a bubble of around these digital assets that is mostly fueled by speculation. And so when we hear that Bermuda is favorably regarded, I guess my question on that is by who? So we think about the BMA and we think about the insurance industry, and I spoke about this last week, but I'll repeat it because I think it's important. We're favorably regarded, not because we offer something that people can't get somewhere, but because we offer the same thing, but in fact at an even higher quality. And some of the names that have been mentioned, Coinbase, for example, and I'm not prejudging their business model, but I do know that they're sort of embroiled in a controversy with the SEC, a major regulator in the United States. And so while I welcome them here and hope that their business is successful here, I sort of have to ask myself, well, what are they doing that has upset the SEC? What would the BMA's view be on that? Is the SEC concerned about something to protect consumers that we don't really cover through our regulation, because it's a different kind of business than, say, the insurance business, which we have been operating in for several decades and are well respected for. And it's important that we don't allow anything to happen that would taint the credibility of the BMA. I view it, the BMA and our regulatory regime, as sort of a major important leg of the tripod of Bermuda's success. And just to kind of put some specific numbers around that, I think, if I've got my numbers right, about a quarter of the Bermuda government's revenue comes from payroll tax through international business. And that would primarily be the insurance businesses, primarily other businesses that are regulated through the BMA. So that just gives you a flavor of how important this is. So as another thing I noticed is, in fact, just yesterday, there was a major report came out on Reuters, so a bastion of business journalism, about Binance, one of these global players. Now, I don't believe Binance is coming to Bermuda, although in the past they have been widely promoted as coming to Bermuda, but that didn't pan out like many of the things that were previously widely promoted by the Premier. And this report is quite lengthy, and I would urge everybody to take a look at it because it outlines some of the issues. And it shows that that firm was regularly commingling funds between its clients' money and its own business money. And, you know, we know that that is pretty much a no-no when it comes to operating a business in the interest of the clients. Now, we might say that the Bermuda legislation that the BMA offers would not permit that. And that, you know, that's fine. The question is, how would do we have the right tools, the right resources to handle what I would call a truly bad actor who would sign up to say they were following all the rules and regulations, but we're just sort of interested in making a buck on the bubble of speculation that is going on in the crypto things there. So I'm glad to see this legislation, glad to see all of the additional tools provided to the BMA. I'm not 100% convinced we have the resources to handle some of these bad actors, in my opinion, that I see out there today. And I think we want to keep an ever vigilant eye and not let our enthusiasm get ahead of the reality of the situation here. So I just want to thank the junior minister for bringing that legislation that we do support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. No, I fully support this Amendment Act 2023. I view this as being more housekeeping to keep in line with the fast moving business world than anything else. I have great confidence in the BMA to continue to do what's right for Bermuda, for the business of Bermuda. It's a extremely well-run independent authority, and so I support the Amendment Act that is being put through. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White, and we await the junior minister. She's conferring with the Bermuda Monetary Authority team headed by I4Us, and she will respond when she has a moment.
Thank you, Madam President. So amongst the commentary, one of the first questions that Senator DeCuto asked was about who favorably regards the work that we are doing here in the digital asset space. And I can say that generally and globally, industry obviously looks at us favorably, but there are also a number of regulatory systems who have in many instances actually modeled the regime that currently exists with the BMA, who actually look favorably upon the relationship that exists between industry, the regulator, and government. And then when we look at the comments pertaining to the SEC, I think it's worth noting that when we look at the SEC, they actually regulate via enforcement. And that's definitely unlike the BMA, who actually look at prevention as opposed to cure. So to, I guess, compare the two, I guess, would be inappropriate in this stance. So when we look at stakeholders who are coming to Bermuda, they're looking for certainty, which is offered by the BMA. I hope that satisfies Senator DeCuto's questions, but I also thank him for his broad support in general. And I thank Senator White as well for his support.
Thank you. So With that, then you can move your bill.
Yep, I will definitely move along, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 be now read a third time.
Is there an objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Digital Asset Business Amendment Act 2023 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you very much, Senator Ariana Hudson and other senators who have supported it. Moving on now to the second order of the day, and that is the Insurance Amendment Act 2023, and that's also in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister for Finance. You can,
Thank you,
you
Madam
have the
President.
floor.
I move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to present the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2023. The purpose of this bill is to amend the Insurance Act 1978 to provide for the following. To amend the act to grant the authority of power to make rules for recovery planning for the commercial insurance sector, representing those insurers registered in classes 3A, 3B, 4C, and D, 4C, D, and E, whose nature, scale, and complexity leads them to pose greater risks to policyholders, the insurance sector, and financial system as a whole. To amend the act to provide for the manner in which the authority may designate which member of an international active insurance group shall be its head. Madam President, Bermuda's financial sector is subject to the regulation and supervision of the Bermuda Monetary Authority, which has a well-deserved reputation as a strong and effective regulator. This government recognizes that a key strength of Bermuda's reputation as a quality jurisdiction to conduct quality business is its robust regulatory regime. In keeping with that, the authority, in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance, continually reviews, amends, and updates its legislative framework as appropriate to ensure protection of consumers and other relevant stakeholders, address financial stability matters, and promote compliance with international standards. This bill is yet another fine example of the positive work being done in that regard. Madam President, the authority was established in 1969 under the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969. The Insurance Act 1978 provides the authority with substantive licensing, supervision, and intervention powers to regulate the insurance industry in Bermuda. Madam President, the licensing and supervisory process is prescribed by law and supplemented by subsidiary legislation and guidance notes. These detail the classes of license based on the nature of the business and related risk, reporting requirement, statutory financial statement filings, and vetting controller shareholders, amongst other aspects. Madam President, the authority is authorized to act as advisor to the Minister of Finance on policy matters related to any financial institution. Accordingly, the authority proposes laws where it can do so appropriately and consistently with its function under the Bermuda Monetary Authority Act 1969. It can also respond to an invitation to do so from international standard-setting bodies as well as other countries. Madam President, you'd be aware that the authority is a long-standing member of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. Presently, the Chief Executive Officer of the authority serves as a member of the IAIS Executive Committee, while other senior members of the authority serve as chairs and vice chairs of several subcommittees. More recently, the authority has been actively engaged in the discussions and development of the recovery and resolution standards for the insurance sector as a member of the IAIS Resolution Working Group. Madam President, by way of background, the House is advised that the IAIS is a voluntary membership organization of insurance supervisors and regulators from around the globe. Established in 1994, the IAIS is the primary international standard-setting body responsible for developing and assisting in the implementation of supervisory material for insurance supervision. Madam President, the mission of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors is to promote effective and globally consistent supervision of the insurance market for the benefit of and protection of policyholders and to contribute to global financial stability. The International Association of Insurance Supervisors has issued Insurance Core Principles as a globally accepted framework for insurance supervision. Madam President, the common framework for the supervision of internationally active insurance groups was incorporated into the ICPs with effect from November 2019. The ICPs set out a globally accepted framework for insurance supervision, while COMFRAME is designed to address group-wide risks and reduce supervisory gaps by coordinating the activities of and exchange of information by different regulators of companies within an internationally active insurance group. Madam President, the IAIS has comprehensively revised ICP 1615, which sets standards for supervisory requirements in relation to recovery planning. ICP 1615-1 further specifies that a supervisor may require an insurer to produce a recovery plan that identifies in advance options to restore the financial position and viability of if the insurer comes under severe stress. Madam President, the recovery planning framework is intended to achieve the following objectives: to aid the relevant insurer in understanding its own risks from severe stress scenarios, and to help strengthen Bermuda's insurance regulatory framework by ensuring that the relevant insurer has a plan to act in an orderly and timely manner when dealing with a situation where an insurer is under severe stress. Madam President, in support of the above, it is proposed to amend the Act to grant the authority a power to make rules for recovery planning for the commercial insurance sector, covering those insurers registered in classes 3A, 3B, 4, C, D, and E due to their nature, scale, and complexity. The recovery planning framework will be applied to these registrants using the authority's risk-based approach to supervision to provide additional protections for policyholders and Bermuda's insurance sector. The relevant insurers will be required to maintain electronic copies and keep hard copies of the recovery plans at their head offices in Bermuda. The requirements of the recovery plan shall be prescribed by the authority in prudential or technical rules. The authority has advised the ministry that rules will be drafted in the near future, taking into consideration any feedback received from consultation related to the bill. As per the authority's normal custom and practice, the rules will also be subject to public consultation. Madam President, ICP 23 covers matters related to group-wide supervision. ICP 23 provides that a group-wide supervisor in cooperation and coordination with other involved supervisors is required to identify an insurance group and determine the scope of insurance group supervision. The Senate will recall that the Act was amended in 2021 to provide a framework for internationally active insurance groups accordingly. Madam President, in addition to the above, ICP 23 provides that involved supervisors should seek agreement amongst themselves on the head of an internationally active insurance group. COMFRAME 23 requires group-wide supervisors to identify the head of an IAIG on a control and risk basis as follows: the legal entity which controls all of the insurance legal entities within the group, and the non-insurance legal entities which pose risk to the insurance operations. Madam President, consideration of these factors will be made on a case-by-case basis by considering the IAIG structure, in particular where there may be different entities exerting shareholder and operational control, to ensure that the entity designated will allow the authority to exercise its supervisory powers most effectively. Madam President, in support of the above, it is proposed to amend the Act to provide for the manner in which the authority may designate which member of an IAIG shall be its head. Once the authority has made a determination, the authority will be required to notify the relevant member of the IAIG of its intention to make such designation. The authority will also be required to take written representations from the member into account when making its final determination. Madam President, such a designation will allow the authority to exercise its supervisory powers over the IAIG most effectively. The Senate is advised that the authority is not currently the group supervisor of any IAIG. However, the COMFRAME requirements for IAIGs are being integrated into Bermuda's insurance supervisory framework, as will allow the authority to take on such a role in the future if the circumstances warranted. Madam President, in accordance with the authority's normal custom and practice, the relevant consultation papers and stakeholder response letters were published on the authority's website, www.bma.bm, as follows. The first, recovery planning. The consultation paper proposed the introduction of recovery planning regime for the insurance sector dated June 2022. The stakeholder response letter, the recovery planning regime for the insurance sector. This one was actually dated the 11th of October, 2022, and so some time lapsed between then. Internationally active insurance groups, with the consultation papers on internationally active insurance groups was dated May 2022. The stakeholder response letter was actually dated the 12th of October 2022. Madam President, the Senate is advised that guidance will be issued later this month for consultation. Madam President, in conclusion, I wish to express my sincere thanks to the authority, the regulatory unit within the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and various insurance stakeholder groups, in particular the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers and the Bermuda International Long-Term Insurers and Reinsurers, for their assistance with the development of this bill. The strong collaboration that exists in Bermuda between industry, the government, and the regulator, forged out of a shared commitment to compliance, quality, and transparency, is a key factor that has been a significant contributor to Bermuda's success. This government will certainly continue its work to ensure that our economy continues to strengthen and grow to create a better quality of life for all residents. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson, Junior Minister of Finance. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCouto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We definitely support this bill. I think the junior minister outlined very well in quite good detail. My understanding is, although I don't have specific numbers, is that this is in fact already a practice carried out by many companies who are doing it. And I believe the Central Bank of Ireland also requires this, and that the PRA will soon require it, and that's the regulator in the United Kingdom. So not surprised to see that we are up there in the forefront of these things. And I want to thank the BMA for the good job that they do and reiterate our support for this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeCouto. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm fully supportive of this bill. I just had one question. It wasn't clear to me when reading through the act whether a company had to be in non-compliance before a recovery plan could be requested by the BMA, or whether the BMA could, under its own authority, at any point in time, request this recovery plan of a company. So that's my one question, but I'm fully supportive of the act, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator White. We will await a response from Senator Hudson as she concurs with the BMA team here.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator DeCouto, as well as Senator White. The short answer is that no, they do not have to be in non-compliance before they go out and ask for the recovery plan. And so with the support of the senators, I'd like to move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2023 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2023 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2023 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson and all senators. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is on our orders of the day, and that is consideration of the draft regulations entitled Government Fees Amendment Number 2, Regulations 2023, and that's also in the name of the Junior Minister, Senator Ariana Hudson. You may proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Standing Order 71-2 be suspended so that Senate may now proceed with consideration of the draft regulations entitled the Government Fees Amendment Number 2, Regulations 2023, notice of which was given earlier in the meeting.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on, Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate do now take under consideration the draft regulations entitled the Government Fees Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2023. Madam President, today I present the Government Fees Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2023. These amendments pertain to Head 6 of the Government Fees Regulations 1976 and represent fee rates pertaining to the alien land license process. Madam President, Part 6 of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act 1956 outlines the alien land license process. This process requires the restricted person to have a license to hold or acquire land in Bermuda and prevents them from appropriating it, and to obtain a license to hold or acquire land in Bermuda for the benefit of restricted persons, and prevents corporations from acquiring or holding land in Bermuda unless they do so in accordance with Part 6 of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act 1956. Madam President, in the 2022-2023 budget year, the alien land license process received over 120 applications pursuant to Part 6 of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act of 1956. These applications included land license applications, permission to land applications, deferral certificate applications, and applications under Section 80 of the Act. These applications resulted in a total revenue of over $280,000. Madam President, the Government Fees Amendment Regulations 2023 were recently approved by this House as part of the 2023 budget legislation. The alien land license fees were inadvertently omitted from the amendment regulations under Head 6 of the schedule. Madam President, to ensure that the alien land license process continues to operate efficiently and effectively, this amendment regulation will correct the schedule to the Government Fees Regulations 1976 to include the missing fees under Head 6. The fees will be reinserted into the Government Fees Regulations 1976 with no change. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We support this and are glad to see the fee issue taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Fully supportive of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator White. Over to you, Senator Hudson. have
Thank you,
full
Madam
support.
President. Again, thank you all for your support. And I'd like to move that the said draft regulations be approved and that the following message be sent to Her Excellency the Governor. May it please Your Excellency, the Senate, having had under consideration the draft regulations entitled the Government Fees Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2023, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance under the provisions of Section 2 of the Government Fees Act 1965, has the honor to inform Your Excellency that the Senate has approved the said draft regulations.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Hudson.
Madam
A suitable
President.
message certainly will be sent. Thank you. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is consideration of the draft rules entitled the Rules of the Supreme Court Amendment Rule 2023, and that's in the name of Senator Reverend Dr. Emily Dill, the Junior Minister for Legal Affairs and Constitutional Reform. Senator Dill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Standing Order 71-2 be suspended so that Senate may now proceed with consideration of the draft rules entitled the Rules of the Supreme Court Amendment Rules 2023, notice of which was given earlier in this meeting.
There is no objection, Senator Dill, carry on.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now take into consideration the draft rules entitled the Rules of the Supreme Court Amendment Rules 2023. Madam President, I'm pleased to present to this honorable Senate the Rules of the Supreme Court Amendment Rules 2023, the Amendment Rules. The Chief Justice, in exercise of the power conferred by Section 62 of the Supreme Court Act 1905, makes the amendment rules. This presentation is therefore undertaken in collaboration with the Chief Justice and in accordance with his power to make these rules. The amendment rules amend Order 62 of the Rules of the Supreme Court 1985 include a provision which provides that the schedule to Order 62 shall apply to scales of costs, fees payable, and taxation of all costs incurred in relations to matters heard in the Supreme Court. In addition, it revokes and replaces the Schedule to Order 62, which provides for the court fees payable into the registry of the Supreme Court. We are all starkly aware of the need to increase the island's revenue stream to assist in stabilizing our economy. As shared by the Honorable Premier in his budget speech 2023 to 24, Madam President, and I quote, an assessment has been completed comparing Bermuda court fees to those in other jurisdictions, and Bermuda's fees were found to be considerably lower than competitor jurisdictions. He continued on to disclose, and I quote again, as Bermuda's international business sector has developed and grown, the number and complexity of court matters have increased significantly. A new scale of fees, which will impact matters being conducted in the Magistrates Court, Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal, has been developed. It is anticipated that these changes will yield an additional $750,000, end of quote. We note, Madam President, that this figure is an estimate of additional revenue projected. These amendment rules are therefore the first round of amendments necessary to rectify the existing judicial revenue stream shortfall. Madam President, for explanatory purposes, I underscore that when documents are filed in the Magistrates Court, Supreme Court, or Court of Appeal, collectively referred to as the courts, litigants are required to pay court fees. These fees are payable to commence a new action or at certain intervals when seeking to continue an action already underway. Madam President, these amendments are long overdue. These fees exist in the first instance, as indeed they do in other jurisdictions, per the considerable cost of facilitating the justice system that litigants rely upon to resolve disputes. Remarkably, there has not been any increase in any of our domestic court fees in almost 60 years. It should therefore come as no surprise that research has shown that Bermuda's current fee schedule for the payment of court fees is manifestly low, especially when compared to other British overseas territories such as the Cayman Islands. Madam President, the overall aim of the amendment rules is to correct this lagging oversight to ensure the sustainability and quality of our justice system. Sustainability, in turn, warrants that consideration is also given to ensuring that the new fees accurately represent our our present day economy. Madam President, the Judicial Department took into consideration many factors, including the anticipated impact on access to justice before increasing the rates. Accordingly, consultation was undertaken with the Registrar for the Courts, the Senior Magistrate, the Chief Justice, and the President of the Court of Appeal. In addition, input was sought from stakeholders such as the Bermuda Bar Association. I reiterate that these overdue reforms bring the fees outlined in line with other similar jurisdictions. In particular, the Chief Justice considers that the fee increases in commercial cases are reflective of the increased judicial resources required to deal with these cases on a timely basis. Madam President, measures in the amendment rules will not result in any additional cost to government. Rather, the increase in fees will lead to a welcomed significant increase in the overall revenue collected by the courts. It is noteworthy that the new fees, in some instances, will be significantly higher than what they were. Again, this speaks to not only current economic reality, but also approximately 6 decades of successive governments not having undertaken this exercise. Madam President, please permit me to add noteworthy context and important technical clarification to these measures. In 2005, there were amendments to the rules of the Supreme Court 1985, which repealed and replaced the provisions Order 62, one of which referred to the schedule to Order 62. The 2005 amendment rules also included a transitional provision by way of Rule 15, Paragraph 4, which saved Part 1, fees payable into the registry of the Supreme Court, of the schedule to Order 62, and by doing so, reiterated for the avoidance of doubt that Part 1 of the schedule was not affected by the 2005 amendments, which in turn has been interpreted as Part 1 being valid. Therefore, the applicability of Part 1 awkwardly remained despite the provision referencing the schedule to Order 62 being omitted. These amendments therefore make provisions as follows. To remove any lingering doubts as to Part 1, the provisions of these amendment rules reinsert into the rules of the Supreme Court 1985 language clearly giving effect to Part 1 of the schedule for legal clarity and for public knowledge of court fees. To update the title of the schedule to reflect the current reference for the new provision being inserted by the amendments. To allocate different fees for commercial litigants, i.e., trade or commerce matters, and non-commercial litigants, and to provide generally higher fees for commercial litigants. Consistent with other jurisdictions, the demarcation takes into consideration not only the means of litigants, but the fact that commercial litigation often has a greater financial outcome and is more demanding upon the justice system. When the rules have proceeded through both houses of the legislature, the Chief Justice can sign the rules. The rules will have effect once they have been officially published. A breakdown of total revenue received through the courts in recent years reveals just how lagging these reforms are, especially when compared to the cost of justice administration. It is discernible that the very limited existing revenue stream is particularly vulnerable to systemic shocks, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which began in early 2020, which undoubtedly reflected in that year's notably decreased revenue collected. A year-over-year annual revenue collected by the court is as follows. In the 2019 to 20 fiscal year, $177,048. In the 2020 to 21 fiscal year, $17,027. In the 21 to 22 fiscal year, $12,622 to 23 fiscal year, $24,622. The amendment rules seize the opportunity to rectify this decade's overdue modernization of court fees, as well as a noted revenue shortfall. Updating the court fee schedule as presented in these amendment rules will also provide the opportunity for more measured incremental increases as required in the future. Madam President, these amendment rules will support an avenue for the Supreme Court of Bermuda to continue to properly administer justice for the foreseeable future. I thank the Honorable Chief Justice, the Registrar of the Supreme Court, and all public officers and stakeholders who contributed to the implementation of this milestone. There's little doubt that this increase in revenue through this and the tranche of court fee reforms will benefit the entire community. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Emily Jill. Before I open the floor for comment from other senators, I'd just like to welcome and acknowledge the permanent secretary for uh, the Ministry for Legal Affairs and Constitutional Reform, Mrs. Gina Hurst-Mabry. Welcome to you. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCouto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the senator for bringing these rules to us. We know that our judicial branch needs more funding. We know that they need to support the staff that are required. They need the right equipment, whether it be AV or projectors and the kinds of things that are used and how we go about our modern way of doing business, even in the courts. Space, they need the appropriate space to carry out their business. So we're glad to see that this provides more resources for them and is another way for the government to raise some much needed funds. And so we do, in general, we support this bill. Very glad, or sorry, rules, I should say, apologies, that we support the commercial versus non-commercial distinction, and we think that's important. We don't want individuals to be unduly burdened. But we do feel that there's perhaps a lost opportunity. Some of you may recall that the OBA has in the past, for example, suggested a way of scaling the court fees on these large commercial cases so that some of these cases, which can be, for multi-millions or sometimes billions of dollars, frankly, these fees that we're seeing here wouldn't even register next to a few hours of the legal fees incurred. So I do think that there's a lost opportunity here that we could have looked to get even more funds from those that were able to pay and needed our services the most. But so overall support, wish we'd done more, and perhaps look forward to seeing that in the future, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeCouto. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I support the bill as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator White. It's over to you then. Senator Dill, you have full support.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, senators. And certainly we are pleased with the work that has been done. And as I noted in the brief, that these amendment rules provides an opportunity for more measured incremental increases as we go forward. So we look forward to continued growth in this area. With that being said, Madam President, I move that the said draft rules be approved and that the following message be sent to Her Excellency the Governor. May it please Your Excellency, the Senate, having had under consideration the draft rules entitled The Rules of the Supreme Court, Amendment Rules 2023, in exercise of the power conferred by Section 62 of the Supreme Court Act 1905, has the honor to inform Your Excellency that the Senate has approved the said draft rules.
Thank you, Senator Dill. A suitable message will be sent.
Thank you.
Moving on then to the next item on the agenda, and that is consideration of the draft rules. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Consideration of the following resolution, and that is in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson. Senator Robinson, you have the floor on the West End development.
Thank you, Madam
Amalgamation.
President. And before I present the actual resolution for consideration, I would just like to read, just give a brief overview of how we actually got to this point,
Mhm.
and where we are at this moment.
Yes, please proceed.
Madam President and Senate colleagues, for decades now, successive government administrations have promised to cut costs, streamline administrative processes, and reduce the tax burden on working class people. Madam President, we can quote many of our predecessors' platitudes in this regard. For example, in 2002, the then cabinet decided that the government's Central Policy Unit should complete a review of 17 quangos, which focused on the following objectives. Number one, determine whether Bermuda's quangos are currently as currently constructed are meeting government's aims, and if not, recommend methods of achieving alignment. Number two, determine whether there is accountability to the government, and if not, recommend an adequate structure to accomplish this. And number three, develop mechanisms for ongoing review. The mandate of this initiative, Madam President, covered a review of the establishment and governance of each body, its existing relevance, feasibility, effectiveness, levels of accountability to government, expenditure, income, whether the work could be more efficiently or effectively carried out within government proper or by some other means, and determine governance and best practice in other jurisdictions in comparison to Bermuda. Madam President, this hard work by the Central Policy Unit culminated in the production of the October 2003 report entitled Untangling Bermuda's Quangos, a review of Quangos in Bermuda government, in which it was recommended that there should be a consolidation of various entities listed in the report, amongst other things. The then 2003 administration endeavored to advance this consolidation recommendation for the purpose of cutting costs, streamlining administrative processes, and reducing the tax burden on working class people. However, for reasons unbeknownst, this consolidation never happened. Madam President, in 2013, a decade after the last report, the Spending and Government Efficiency SAGE Commission was established to perform an overall review of the Bermuda government fiscal and personnel performance. Again, the goal of this was to make recommendations for cost cuttings and streamlining administrative processes. This October 2013 SAGE report also recommended the consolidation of government quangos. Once again, this did not occur. Madam President, between October 2003 and July 2017, there have been 5 administrations under differing leadership, all of whom committed in various ways to reduce the administrative costs of running the government. Some may have done better than others. However, all 5 did not implement the recommendation of the consolidation of quangos. Therefore, Madam President, upon entering government in July 2017, this administration heeded the advice received in both the October 2003 and 2013 reports and began the initiative to look at how a possible consolidation of 3 quangos under the remit of the Honorable Minister of Public Works can occur. Leaders of these 3 quangos, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, BHC, the Bermuda Land Development Company, BLDC, and the West End Development Corporation, WEDCO, then began to meet on a regular basis to discuss the feasibility of such an action. Arising from this, the Honorable Minister made the following decisions. Number 1, in September 2018, a freeze on all new hires was issued to all 3 quangos. Number 2, the CEO and CFO of the BLDC departed the company. Number 3, effective November 2018, the then BHC General Manager, Major Barrett Dill, assumed management responsibility for the BLDC as interim CEO in addition to his responsibilities as at the BHC. Number 4, effective November 2018, as well, this BHC CFO, Mr. Mark Mello, assumed financial responsibility for the BLDC in addition to his responsibilities at BHC. And number 5, effective January 2021, the WEDCO General Manager assumed responsibility for BLDC as interim CEO. Madam President, these changes, as detailed, assisted in the formation of a 2022 recommendation to the Cabinet for the amalgamation of the BLDC and WECO into one new entity, as these two Quangos share similar objectives, mandates, skills, accounting procedures, and staff levels, to which the Cabinet wholeheartedly agreed to the merger. As such, the Honorable Minister of Public Works advised the Honorable House of Assembly of the Cabinet's decision in July 2022. If we are counting, Madam President, this is a full 19 years since the first merging recommendation was made and 20 years since the initiative began. Madam President, the last 10 months, the team of technical officers led by Andrew Diaz in his capacity as general manager and CEO of WECO and BLDC, respectively, have been fervently working to see this amalgamation come to fruition in line with a roadmap that has been produced to systematically get the initiative across the finish line. But how will this merger actually occur, Madam President? As the Honorable Minister detailed in his statement to the House of Assembly on March 24, 2023, the methodology of this approach will see amendments made to the West End Development Corporation Act 1982, dissolution of the BLDC, and repeal of Baseland Development Act 1996, which incorporated the BLDC as a limited liability company. However, we are not at the point yet in this process. There is still work to be done. Madam President, the direction to move to dissolve the company and repeal the Baseland Development Act 1996 is attributed to legal advice received that detailed an arduous legislative process if the reverse would occur. As the BLDC is a limited liability company in accordance with the Bermuda Companies Act 1981, there is a set dissolution procedure and precedent set forth in the Companies Act that must be followed. It is a simple process legally wise. Once the company transfers its assets and liabilities to WECO and is dissolved, the act can be repealed. Madam President, obviously, as we can tell, this has been an all-encompassing initiative, but please allow me to go into detail as to what has occurred up to this point, to date. Number one, the Minister of Public Works wisely began amalgamating the boards of BLDC and WECO by appointing some identical members to assist with the transition. Number two, the transition team has merged the WECO and BLDC service and software, initially running all finance and IT systems for both entities from a single location. Number three, there is now a joint marketing and PR strategy ready for the new entity. Number four, the job description reviews and internal policy assessments are nearly completed. Number five, the respective boards have been discussing the long-term vision for the new entity, which will be finalized once the merger is completed. And number six, overseen by the transition team, the respective entities have entered into renegotiations for new identical collective bargaining agreements with union partners, those being the BIU and BPSU. So when the merger is complete, there will be set agreements already in place. Madam President, it should be noted that attributed to this renegotiation process, and as the Honorable Minister has stated, there are no redundancies anticipating resulting from this amalgamation. The initial staffing of the new entity will see minimal duplication of roles, but note that reductions will occur over time through natural attrition through retirement. The rationale behind this direction is the benefit of ensuring that any important institutional knowledge is retained into future operations while avoiding severances. With all the aforementioned stated, Madam President, in preparation for the anticipated dissolving of the BLDC, the Minister of Public Works, as a member of the company, is now seeking permission from the legislature to begin dissolution proceedings for the company in accordance with Section B of the Base Lands Development Act. Section 8B of the Act stipulates that unless authorized by the legislature, a member of the company shall not procure the dissolution of the company or its amalgamation with any other person or body. Therefore, Madam President, at its sitting on the May 12, 2023, the other place passed a motion to dissolve the BLDC so that it may be amalgamated with VEDCO. Madam President, the administration view these changes as an opportunity which will effect cost savings by reducing duplication of roles, combining responsibilities, and bringing a sharper focus to deliver on this government's mandate to control costs and operate more efficiently. To prove this initiative is financially practical, we are anticipating a cost savings of $700,000 in this year alone. Madam President, I'm pleased to state that the phased approach to the merger is moving expeditiously. Thanks must be given to the team of technical officers ably led by Mr. Andrew Diaz in his dual roles. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the BLDC chairperson, Ms. Levita Fogo, JPMP, members of the BLDC board, the WEDCO chairperson, Mr. Navaltiro, JPMP, and the board at WEDCO for their continued service during this ongoing initiative. I now invite other members to participate. Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. But before I open the floor to senators, I would just like to welcome back the Minister of Public Works and, Minister Honorable, please, the Minister of Public Works, Minister, the Honorable David Birch, who's in the gallery. And I want to highlight, I do want to highlight and thank you for the work that you do. And I'm sure the rest of the senators join me in this. But I welcome you, and I also welcome the policy analyst back, Stephen Simons. Welcome to you both. Now the floor is open, senators, for comment. Senator D'Acuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Senator Robinson for that fulsome description. It's clear the level of detail and the intricate moving parts of this that are being addressed. We in the OBA certainly welcome anything that brings efficiency, consistency, and a better result for the Bermudian public. So, we're definitely in support of this. Did have a few questions that occurred to me, and the senator did answer a few of them, but first in my mind is always, of course, when people say efficiency and synergies, other people say, where is my job? And so, I was glad to see the thoughtful approach being considered here to undertake through a policy of attrition and not replacing roles. And it was also mentioned that, of course, a hiring freeze has already been put in place. So it's clear that the minister is getting these quangos to run a tight ship, which we certainly appreciate on behalf of the Bermudian public. I guess my specific questions were, we did hear about the quantum of savings being $700,000 this year alone. With respect to that amount, I would be curious to know what it was in reference to the total budget of those entities. Is it a 10% saving or 5% saving? And then as we look forward, say, long-term projections, what kind of percentage or dollar savings could we imagine once the full amalgamation is completed? I have a similar question related to the staffing situation, because, clearly we hear about some staff changes that have already happened. We hear about the attrition. But, as we look forward, let's say 5 years or whenever this is all kind of wrapped up and going along, what sort of percentage or number of staff reduction versus the total staff, what we might expect? And then a third question, and I guess it probably more is illustrative of my lack of understanding of the detailed operations. It does sound nice to talk about efficiency, but we have to accept that WEDCO is in the west and BLDC is in the east, and you can certainly imagine that perhaps you would not be driving trucks back and forth across the island all day long. So the opportunities for consolidation there may be less than we might hope for. So if the Senator, any comments on that could put my mind to rest, I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Decuto. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Combinations of organizations in the private sector typically result in redundancies, and I understand that this is not the private sector, so I understand the sensitivities around redundancies. I would just look forward to having perhaps reports at certain points in the future around the $700,000 figure of savings that have been projected, because I think, unless there's rigor around those actual savings, then, the benefits of consolidation, may not be quite as apparent as they would appear to be now. So I would just ask that that we receive, success stories in the future as to, whether that 700,000 in savings was actually achieved. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White. Would any other senator care to speak? No. And Senator Robinson, you have support with a few questions.
I'll answer the question firstly on staffing.
Mhm.
Once the company is merged, and the respective board will be able to then ascertain the best staffing levels needed. But we are expecting less staffing that would be required. Madam President, can we get Mr. Decuto maybe just to clarify the budget questions? I know he mentioned, he started out talking about efficiencies and synergies. I think he mentioned, I just want us to be clear on the question, total budget of these, the percentage savings. What is the full percentage savings? Could maybe Mr. Decuto just elaborate? I just want to make sure we are able to answer the question correctly.
Senator Decuto, did you have a specific question on the savings?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. The question is, $700,000 is what percentage of the total combined budget of the current entities? Or you could equivalently answer it as just giving us that total budget so we could understand the impact. And if I may just follow up on the question of the staffing levels, if you permit, Madam President?
Yes, I mean, you
Yeah,
can ask the question if you want.
I must admit, I'm a bit perplexed, given the amount of detailed work that seems to be done on this, that there does not seem to be a specific answer on the staffing levels. I can certainly tell you that should I have a project or an initiative in my business, that I would be run through the ringer on specific numbers of headcounts and what would be happening before anything was approved. And perhaps the senator might ask the analyst to perhaps dig a little deeper, or I would certainly welcome a specific number or range of numbers. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, we'll update on staff levels going forward.
Fine. Thank you. With that, and that you have support. for this resolution, so you want to move it?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate do now take under consideration the following motion. Be it resolved that the Senate, in accordance with the provisions of Section 8 of the Base Lands Development Act 1996, approves the dissolution of the Bermuda Land Development Company, BLDC, so that it may be amalgamated with the West End Development Corporation, WEDCO.
Support for that resolution? There is support.
Madam President, I move that the said motion be approved.
It has been moved that the said motion be approved. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. It is approved, and thank you, Senator Robinson, and thank you all senators who have spoken. That concludes our items for under the orders of the day. We'll now move on to item number 14, which is motions. There are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would any senator care to speak on either of those? Senator Ben Smith, opposition leader, you have the floor. It's already 1:45. No, Minister Darrell, are you suggesting that we should have had this?
Madam
Senator-
President,
Minister, what is your?
I would ask that we please break for lunch.
Senators, the minister has suggested that we break for lunch, and therefore we will break for lunch. So we will return at 2 o'clock. Senate stands adjourned until 2. Thank you, senators.